Good morning. Welcome to the May 23rd County Board meeting. Will you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I will turn the gavel over to the vice chair.
Okay, thank you. We will start with the open forum. I see we have one here, Troy Scheffler, 3 minutes.
Well, I keep having to show up because, well, the board's full of lying degenerates, but in any event, it is curious that the chair keeps handing the gavel over to you, but she thought it was appropriate to get involved in this extortion scandal that I talked to you guys about a couple weeks ago. She was very instrumental to that after the county attorney's office said, no, we can't do this. The law doesn't justify it. But Ms. Rosemary, if the attorney for the Association of Minnesota Townships says this is an allowable expense, why does Crow Wing County have a different opinion? In the email thread, it stated that Lake Edwards lawyer is willing to help you if you need to have help! Exclamation point. Have you reached out to their lawyer for his point of view? If not, please contact him before making any final decisions. This is a very important issue. Well, that was a final decision. Thank you! Exclamation point. Sent to Gary Griffin. She didn't even have the courage to send it to Don Ryan. In fact, it sounds to me like she was trying to go around Don Ryan after his office said no. But what's really concerning, and by the way, Tim, sorry about having the wrong initial on your summons. I'll correct that and reserve it. But Tim Hool sent to the entire board, and this is really concerning that not one of you guys stepped up and said, this doesn't sound right. Why would we want to provoke Mr. Scheffler into suing us? So it says, we recently received a notice from Lake Edward Township asking us to certify on the tax rolls an assessment for a legal cost associated with a petition from Troy Scheffler for a cartway. The petition was withdrawn after Mr. Scheffler did not win the court case that sued the township over the cartway issue. That didn't happen. That's not what the cost that they were demanding, and you guys knew it. Well, at least Ms. Franzen did. And also, the county doesn't certify it. It's a township. If you check your records, the township asked you to certify it. They never certified anything per statute. Initially, Don was not sure whether we had the authority to tax that legal cost associated with a cartway petition. We asked him to reach out to the township's attorney, and they were advising the township that they thought that we could. Well, they're the township's attorney. Why didn't you just rely on what your attorney said? He did have a conversation with the township's attorney. I believe he would authorize the assessment soon. In my conversations with him, it is a bit unclear in statute whether we can attach this or not. Should have left it at that. On the one hand, the assessment statute contemplates a service charge and an allowed assessment. For instance, our solid waste assessment is a service charge for our recycling efforts and is assessed to the property every year. In this instance, it's a little muddier. This is your county administrator saying the issue is muddy and it has no legal basis. But it goes on to say, and that is to cover the costs associated with the township's attorney costs to defend themselves in the lawsuit, one which didn't exist. You will recall from our own cartway experience that the township is not allowed to use general fund dollars on a cartway petition. The statute contemplates the cost to be borne by the petitioner in the absence of the assessment. How could the township comply with the statute if he wouldn't pay the bill, which we all presume to be the case? Well, thanks for the confidence on me paying my bills. As such, I will think Don is okay with seeking court clarification on the issue, as there is no case law on the topic that might help us better decide what is and is not allowed under the statute. Bottom line, it's time to find out. We believe the court will tell us, and we're confident we will be sued and get a definitive answer in the future. I'm sure there will be more to come on the issue. So you guys use taxpayer citizens as guinea pigs? Did you guys get elected to do this? Did the people want you to spend all these legal offenses or expenses? That's pretty incredible. Not one of you guys said, hey, no legal basis, no case law, the statute doesn't support it, there isn't even a certification by the township. But Miss Franzen conned you guys into doing this. This is pathetic. And once again, if she's willing to handle the gavel over right now, why didn't she stay out of this? The township had absolutely no reason to get involved in this. And now you're getting sued. Multiple times. I mean, I think the public is owed an answer, not just me. So I'll wait for that. So will they.
Thank you. I will hand the gavel back to Chair Rosemary.
Thank you. Next thing on the agenda is the review and approval of the minutes for the May 5th meeting. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Hoag, second by Commissioner Coring. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Review and approve the agenda.
No changes? Sorry. I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Barrows, second by Commissioner Coring. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda.
Madam Chair, if there's no questions, I would move adoption of the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Coring, second by Commissioner Hoag. Are there any questions on this? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The 9:05, it is past 9:05. Public
Madam-
hearing to amend the golf cart.
Madam Chair, I would move to open the public hearing to amend the golf cart ordinance.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Coring, second by Commissioner Barrows. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Yes?
Madam Chair, if it'd be appropriate, I've got a piece of paper to show you, if I could, that just outlines our request.
After Chris is done, yes, would you please bring it forward?
I will, thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Board. What you have before you today is a proposed amendment to ordinance number 1901, an ordinance regulating the use of golf carts on county roads in Crow Wing County. Basically, the ordinance allows municipalities and townships to adopt an ordinance to allow the use of golf carts on county roads. Once that ordinance is adopted, it comes back to the county board, and the board chooses to approve that through an official board action of record, and then they're allowed at that point to be able to use golf carts on the county roads. As we were looking through the ordinance, we realized that for the first assessment and second assessment district, as the county board serves as a township board, it seemed to be redundant if we had any requests in those two townships to come to the county board twice. So what we're proposing to change is in section 1, general provisions, 1.2D, which says the county, through an official board action of record, shall decide on all requests in the first assessment district and second assessment district. We did put this out for public comment from March 20th to April 20th, and we did not receive any comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the board? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak?
Well, this request is to use the portion of the highway that is already marked off with a white line for pedestrians and bicycles and snowmobiles and et cetera. So this is the same width that is already painted on the bridge, but somewhere the golf carts are excluded. I don't know why, but anyway, on either side of the bridge are golf trails, snowmobile trails used in the winter, and they're all within 6 foot width along the bridge and the highway. So the question is to be able to go across the bridge, which is already marked off for bicycles and pedestrians, and would not impair any drivers. It's a request.
Chris, can you explain that?
Yeah, what Dutch is requesting is out on Highway 77, heading out towards East Gull. We've got the Gull River Bridge, and he would like to be able to access that with golf carts to be able to come, to be able to go so they can access both sides of the development of the golf course over there. That's what he's asking to do.
Is that what this ordinance does?
This would do that, then we didn't, we haven't had an official request yet, and to get it on the agenda formally, and so I think that would probably be the next step, would be to get a formal request and come back and ask for approval, at the next board meeting for his request.
Okay. Did you hear that?
No, I can't hear either. I mean, you guys got to amplify your voice a little bit.
Okay.
I'm having a hard time.
Is that better? A little
Yeah.
louder, right? All right, there you go. All right. This was a request from Dutch to use
There
the, is that
Perfect.
better? Okay,
Yeah.
good. To use the Connery Road 77 bridge over the Gull River, to be able to use golf carts on it to cross that so they can get to two different parts of their property, because there's a little bit of terrain that's a little more difficult on the other side of the road. What you have before you today is just to simply amend the ordinance to allow the county board to act on decisions in first assessment. We have talked with Dutch about this, and we didn't receive the formal request in writing in time to get on the county board agenda to make a decision. So I think we would go through the process of deciding if we want to amend the ordinance or not, and at the next county board meeting, we would get the formal request from Dutch, then we'd bring it back to the county board for you to review and make a decision at that point.
Okay.
Okay, did you understand? Did you understand what Chris just said?
Hard to hear, Madam Chair.
Okay. This is an ordinance that allows the county board to make that choice, and you should bring it back at the next meeting, or we should bring it back at the next meeting.
And, Madam Chair,
Yes.
Dutch and Rick, you're welcome to attend.
Could you speak,
You're welcome to attend, you don't need to attend, but the issue will come back. It's basically a two-step process that we have to go through. So today is step one, next board meeting would be step two to get the request processed.
Okay. Do we return again? at
we don't
the
need,
next
we don't
meeting?
need to come back.
Okay.
You can, but you don't have to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do I have a motion to amend the golf cart ordinance?
Madam Chair,
Still in public hearing.
Oh, we have to.
is there anybody else?
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Madam Chair, I would move to close the public hearing to amend the golf cart ordinance.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Coring, second by Commissioner Barrows. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we need the resolution to amend the golf carts ordinance.
Madam Chair, I would so move the resolution to amend the golf cart ordinance.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Coring, second by Commissioner Barrows. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, County,
See you, Dutch.
thank you. Well, the next on the agenda is the county engineer.
I don't know if he heard you.
It's always nice to see Dutch at our meetings. Madam Chair and Commissioner, thank you for having me again today. Today, I'm here to continue our conversation about the intersection and pedestrian improvement project in Cross Lake. We've been working really closely with the city and civic groups on this project, and we've come to a point, as I mentioned in the Committee of the Whole meeting last week, we're at a critical point where a decision needs to be made which will set the course for the project. And that's in particular the intersection configuration, and then also the use of a 10-foot parking lane on the east side of CASAS 66. Those two things are really important and really, like I said, sets the course, and we need to have a decision. So I'm asking today, your packet has a resolution that outlines it. The RBA, or the request for board action, was full of information. The packet included the slides that I presented at the Committee of the Whole last week. Public comment was included in there, and even probably some more information I've forgotten to mention. And so before we get to asking for your consideration of that, I know that there are several people in the crowd that would like to speak, and if it's your pleasure, Madam Chair, I would suggest having them be able to present what they have to share with you today.
Okay, I'll let them speak. I have if anyone wants to speak, I hope you filled out a form, because that's how I get. The first one I have is Dodo Fraser.
She filled it out for you.
Okay, my name is Dodo Fraser, and I live in Cross Lake, and I have lived there for 75 years. I came as a bride in 1948, and I've lived there and paid taxes for 75 years, more than you guys are even alive. Anyway, I have a lot of reasons that I don't think that roundabout is a good fit for Cross Lake. But a lot of us have just given up because it seems like it's the way it's going to go. But I would suggest, my suggestion is just a simple one. I don't know how many of the board has been to Cross Lake, but I would invite you to take the little drive out to Cross Lake. It's only 25 miles to the intersection of, it used to be what was downtown Cross Lake, the intersection of 3 and 66, and take a look around and see how beautiful it is, and then imagine what it's going to look like if the roundabout comes in. And then while you're there, take a couple of minutes and maybe go into Pine Peaks and have coffee, and stop in at some of the local businesses and get a little feedback from some of the people. I know Tim knows that when we've had those hearings out there, I really felt sorry for him because the people were just, highly opposed to it. But of course, some of us gave up after the city council basically approved it. But I feel, and I don't know for sure, but I feel that most of the people in Cross Lake would rather not have a roundabout. We would rather have stoplights or stop signs or something to make it a little bit different. But I just urge you to delay, don't vote today. Wait until you've been to Cross Lake. Come on out. We're the beauty spot of Minnesota. Come on out and see us and maybe talk to some of the people. That's all I ask. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Dave Nevin.
I am a person on the council that Dodo said voted for the roundabout. What I'm here to do is, the roundabout came about with the National Loon Center coming into the Army Corps campground. That was kind of one of the big stepping stones. The National Loon Center went to the legislature for funding for $8 million. They were awarded $2.5 million. We're not sure what's going to happen with the National Loon Center. So what I'm here to do is just to ask you to delay this, table it for a month until the National Loon Center can come up and disclose what its plan is. I think the pedestrian traffic is a huge part of this thing here, and as Dodo said, there's a lot of people that aren't convinced that the roundabout is going to take care of that. But so all I'm asking for is a table for a month for the Loon Center to come forward with their plan. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if you just stick around for a second, I do have a follow-up question.
Sure.
what if there's no answer from the Loon Center in a month? And I know we're on a tight
Yeah,
timeline.
we are on a schedule. This is about 15 months or so away from startup of construction, so we do have some time. It's not a panic. I've talked to the people at the Loon Center, and they assure me that in a month's time, they will have their plan. They'll be there. So we've been hearing that for about 6 months, though, I agree with you. But I think this is kind of a drop dead. You guys got to come out of the bushes and tell us what you're doing.
So I would assume, Mr. Nevins, that the plan by the Loon Center group would be that they're going to move forward. You know, they have a pot of money now, not enough to do the project.
Right.
But I would assume that their goal would be to continue to move forward. So I don't see how delaying it, if that's the vote of the board, would change that. You know,
Well-
so in a month, they would still be moving forward.
They have
In
a
some
pot of
manner.
money, but I'm speculating here, but it's not half of what they need. So there's some funding that they've been working on real hard for years, and it's slow coming in. So is it going to go? For sure. I mean, that's a question I have. I don't know. I'd like to see it concrete, you know. It's going to impact Cross Lake tremendously.
Right. My only point was that their movement will be forward regardless.
Well, I don't know if that's true or not. What if they don't get the funding? What if they don't, you know? What if there's an $8 million shortfall, which I think is about where it's at now? Don't quote me on that. But if there is, who's going to come up with that, you know?
Well, I know
And
that,
again-
I know Congressman Nolan worked on that project, you know, with the BP's oil spill back in the day in the Gulf, and there's dollars there. I don't know exactly how they get parsed out. I'm sure Representative Stauber would be happy to
they're-
work on that project also.
They're all
so-
working on it, and they have been for quite some time.
Right.
That's what concerns me a little bit, is it doesn't seem to be getting traction. It doesn't seem to be getting there, so. And again, I don't know what a month impact is gonna have on the project. I know Tim and the engineers, and they wanna get going. But it's extremely critical and important to the residents of Cross Lake, what happens on that corner.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Next, Mary Dissinger. I hope I said that right.
Not quite. It's Dischinger. And I have lived in Cross Lake all my life, too, and I'm 72. So unfortunately, the Cross Lake City Council voted in favor of the resolution that supports the construction of the roundabout at the intersection of County Roads 3 and 66. The majority of my Cross Lake residents and neighbors are against a roundabout at this location. I think they believe they can't fight City Hall, that the council has disregarded their opinions, and they must accept it and move on. And I'm not one of those. The proposed plans for the National Loon Center do not include adequate parking for visitors there. Consequently, visitors to the Loon Center will be forced to park elsewhere in the downtown area by Andy's Bar, the Cross Lake School, or the historic Log Village. This project is being recommended to facilitate pedestrian crossing to the Loon Center that hasn't even been built yet. If a roundabout were to be built at that intersection, it wouldn't protect the pedestrians because the primary purpose of a roundabout is to keep traffic moving. It's not a safe way for pedestrians to cross. We were told at one point that drivers must make eye contact with pedestrians so they know to stop. It doesn't sound safe to me. So I'm asking the county board to consider other options to provide for safe pedestrian crossing at that intersection. The whole project is hinged on the future building of the National Loon Center. There we go. I'm proposing you consider stoplights at that intersection. It would provide for a much safer pedestrian crossing. And consider the destruction of property that would result if a roundabout were built. That would also result in less parking, smaller downtown parking area for local businesses and Loon Center visitors. And the one thing I want to mention is I'm not against roundabouts. I kind of like them. And the one at 11 and 3 is going to be perfect. A person I knew well was killed at that intersection. So I'm with it. But so give some thought before voting on this Cross Lake construction. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Sonia Slack.
Good morning. I have lived in Cross Lake for 38 years and have been a business owner there all of that time. I don't think any of you live in Cross Lake, but please raise your hand if you do. The county reportedly received an unprecedented number of public comments on the Cross Lake intersection project, so an open house was organized for November 29th at Cross Lake City Hall. Jake Bongard pitched strongly for a roundabout, but he also works for Bolton and Menk. He seemed to think the fact that the grants would cover most of the expense would sway the 250 or so attendees to his way of thinking, but it did not. I don't recall a single person speaking in favor of it. Some of you were there, so you saw firsthand. Overwhelmingly, residents wanted flashing lights or smart lights, if anything at all. I signed their papers promising me project updates, but I never received one project update or communication of any kind. Cross Lake is not laid out like most towns. We have one road through town. That's why we're not allowed to have a 4th of July parade. The road must be kept open for emergency vehicles. Roundabouts might have less fatal crashes, but they have more fender benders. And stats for pedestrian safety is conflicting at best. Jake admitted that bicycle traffic would be a problem. Also, I would submit I have never seen a roundabout in a heavy pedestrian intersection. Mary already covered the Loon Center and lack of parking, so I'll skip that part. Handicapped people are very familiar with stoplights and how to navigate their way. Roundabouts, not so much. Extended trailers and campers come in and out of our popular federal campground constantly. A roundabout to accommodate this would need to be gargantuan. The citizens do not want a city-fied entrance to our vacation community. I ask you to spend your allotted dollars somewhere else. There are, even close to Cross Lake, a couple places that might benefit from a roundabout, but at our busiest pedestrian intersection, that is not it. We all know engineers love shiny new objects, but Cross Lake residents have overwhelmingly told you they do not want this change. I believe upwards of $800,000 has been spent just to study our intersection. If you force this roundabout on us against what your constituents have plainly told you they want, everyone will have proof of what we already suspect, that the community meeting was just a ruse. You're here to represent us, not overpower us, and I hope you'll take some other speaker's suggestion, come up to Cross Lake and look for yourself and see how it would completely change the entrance to our town. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Robin Sylvester.
Good morning. I'm Robin Sylvester, and I am a new resident of Cross Lake. I was meditating on this issue this morning, and what came to me was envisioning an old Western movie where people in the town are visiting and dancing in the roads. They're enjoying the camaraderie with family and friends. And all of a sudden, 2 horsemen come to town, and the streets go silent, and the joy retreats. The fear of the people of those 2 horsemen is cunning. People start disappearing and retreating for shelter and afraid to use their voice because they're afraid what's going to come next. Did the residents' voice, were they heard at the city council? I heard overwhelmingly that people are against this. So my question is, what is the city and the residents' authority over a county road, a CSAH road? Does their voice matter, or was it predetermined by the state aid, Department of Transportation, then to the local level, District 3, to then our county engineer, trying to influence our city council to approve this because the new shiny object is a roundabout. The joy in the streets of Cross Lake is amazing. I've witnessed it myself in the short time that I've been there. This roundabout will slow that down, will cause conflict. People look now at some of these wonderful roundabouts, I like them as well, in the right location. This is a busy location with a lot of foot traffic, and the joy that's happening there will be hindered by the worry of crossing that road. I have a question. Excuse me, was the contractor hired as a design-build contractor? Were they to do the PE, the CE, and the construction? So were they trying to influence Cross Lake City Council based on the size of the project? That's just a question. I do not know that answer. Why did the report that they submitted not show the advantages or the disadvantages clearly on a flashing light or a stoplight there? I would encourage this body to take a look at the stakeholder engagement, listen to the mayor, and I request an extension, and I would go out to 60 to 90 days because the bonding money, the $2.5 million that the Loon Center just received, has a sunset, I believe, of 6 years. There is plenty of time to make this decision. And if we need an intermediate solution, put a light in. Take some time. Don't just waste taxpayer money. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Dave Fisher.
Dave Fisher, 36412 Rushmore Boulevard in Cross Lake. As a point of interest, I've paid close attention to this proposed project because I've been on the Cross Laker Water Quality Group since its inception in 2017 and am a past president of WAPOA. Obviously, we've all heard the major objectives of the proposal: to maximize pedestrian and vehicle safety and to improve traffic flow. Statistics and studies compiled by the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety confirm roundabouts best accomplish these objectives. The studies show roundabouts reduce intersection injury crashes by 72 to 80% and reduce all crashes 35 to 47%. Converting conventional intersections reduce pedestrian crashes by about 75% when they're made into roundabouts. Particular problems for older drivers at traditional intersections include left turns and busy thoroughfares at cross streets. And we certainly know that Cross Lake is predominantly of people my age. Roundabouts eliminate these situations entirely. Regarding traffic flow, a study of 11 intersections in Kansas found a 65% reduction in delays and a 52% average reduction in vehicle stops. Perhaps the most interesting results of the Institute published studies is the fact that only 36% of people support roundabouts before construction. But shortly after they're built, the number rises to 50%. And 1 year later, 70% of the people support that a roundabout was built. If you look at the comments received on the public comment website, most of the negative comments regarding the roundabout proposal are subjective opinions, not supported by facts and statistics. If you simplistically count those comments opposed and those in favor, we're at about the 35% level of people who support it. The decision today should not be based on the volume of negative comments, knowing that after 1 year, studies show a majority of those opposed will subsequently support a roundabout. The decision needs to consider the best options for the future, not based on past or current conditions. Therefore, I urge you to approve the expert recommendations of the county engineer and the county department for CASA 366 improvements. I also applaud the inclusion of the stormwater management improvements that will improve water quality in the Pine River watershed.
Thank you. Well, that's the last person that filled out a form. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Is there anyone online?
Anyone online who would like to speak?
Okay, hearing none. Is there anyone here representing the Loon Center? Okay.
Madam Chair, if I could pose the question to you, Tim, what would a month's delay, how would that impact the schedule for Bolton and Mink, I assume, is who we're trying to satisfy in designing this intersection?
Well, the goal has always been to have it in place, so when the pedestrians and the vehicle traffic come to Cross Lake for this new attraction, the Loon Center, it's there. And not very often.
Can you speak up, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Not very often in my line of business do we get to be proactive, and a lot of times we're reactive after somebody's hurt or something's happened. And that's really been the timeline, is to make sure we are, there's a lot more design work to do. Bolton and Mink has been leaning forward a little bit as much as they can, because if, for example, the decision is made to not do the improvements that are recommended, it changes the scope of our contract substantially, and that we could have to pay for work that's no good and it has been a waste of time, and some of the stuff we might not pay for. And so Bolton Mink can only lean ahead so far. A month's delay will make it very difficult to achieve that goal. I don't want to stand here or sit here and say that it's impossible. It makes it very difficult. As I mentioned at the Committee of the Whole, we take 5 years to develop projects like this, and we've had just short of a year to do it. We have less than a year to date since we started the contract with Bolton and Mink. So the short answer is it will make it very difficult, but not impossible.
So to be clear, this has been on our 5-year HIP program.
It has been since even before the grants were awarded, because we had had some positive feedback from our grant applications. In particular, it was the Pedestrian Transportation Alternatives Grant that we were anticipating. So there was early remnants of that, like the engineering and studies we're projecting to the public in the 5-year plan and the county board, that we're going to start spending money on it. So we've been working on it for a number of years, but in earnest with a consultant on board for just short of a year. The contract was only signed in September of last year. And that's a very short time frame.
Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, against my better judgment, I probably shouldn't say anything, but everybody knows me. I'm not afraid to say what I think, and I just some comments. One thing I will say that I hope the City Council doesn't think that we coerced them in any way. I'm guessing that the people that are on the Cross Lake City Council are very strong-minded people that looked at this and voted for what they thought was right. And so I kind of reject the fact that to say that we're coercing the City Council. I don't believe that. And obviously I'm not speaking for anybody else except myself. I've been doing this stuff for almost 20 years, politics, and I listen to people, and then I make the decision that I think is the best for the public overall. I don't wet my finger and put it in the air and see which direction everybody's going, because that's not the way you should do this job, I don't think. I think back to, 8-10 years ago when we redid the road through Cross Lake, there was a tremendous amount of opposition then. People just, no, I don't want it that way. We listened to the people, but we did the road through there, and then after it was over with, everybody seemed to like it. Never heard another word from them. Same thing with the Ojibwe Road in Nashway, which is a $12 million project. I don't know, 8-9 years ago, the people came in here, was almost like with pitchforks saying, we don't want this road done. And you know what, the county board at that time just says, all right, if you don't want it, then we didn't do anything at that time. But eventually we have to do something because the road was falling apart. And so now we're redoing that road on Ojibwe and Nashway. There's still people that are never going to be happy. There's just no way that we can please everybody. But I think we try to make the best decision that's the best for the public. Here's another project that's coming through. There's a $1.2 billion power line that's coming through Crow Wing County. It's coming right through my district. Do you think that there's people that are not happy? There are people that are not happy. But this power line is going to be for the greater good of all the citizens of Minnesota. The power company, I've went to one of their meetings, they are bending over backwards to try to accommodate people and to do it so that it doesn't upset people too bad, but ultimately that has to go through. They have eminent domain authority to do that. And I hope you understand that, we have a responsibility to make decisions that protect the public. And so I guess I've listened, this isn't just the first day that we've listened to this. We've had lots of input. And we listen to people that have the diplomas on the walls, that are, engineers, and the statistics. We listen to the statistics, and then we try to make a decision that is best for the public. So it's more of just a comment, but I don't want anybody to think we're coercing anybody, because I certainly am not, and I believe this board, I've never seen it. It's been over 10 years, and I've never seen us try to coerce another city or township to make a decision. So anyway, I'll just stop there, but I don't know. I guess I'm going to go with what Tim, if you think that we need to move forward with this, or can we wait a month? I'm going to ask the same question that Commissioner Barrows did. I guess, and then in respect to the mayor of Cross Lake, I guess, if he thinks that we should wait a month, I guess if you don't think it's going to be the end of the world, I think I'm leaning that way. So I'll just stop there. Thanks.
What is your preference?
Pardon me? Like I said, I'm sorry, I was just waiting for the chair. Like I said, it's not impossible, it'd be very difficult to do. I don't want to move the project forward at the expense of some of the comments that you've heard and being able to answer the questions. We've had a very robust public involvement process. That doesn't mean that everybody gets what they want, because it's impossible, because it is a split. It's very evenly split in the community. And so I would like to be able to answer the questions that people have, and I wrote down some of the stuff. I'd like to address some of that today, later, if I may. So my preference is to keep it going, but I don't want to be at the expense of somebody feeling that they were not heard. And if I might have an opportunity to explain some of that so I can answer their specific questions or concerns today.
Madam Chair, could I ask, oh, John, it's your district.
Well, once you're done, I'll
Okay.
I'll have the last word, Paul,
Okay.
if you can
Well,
believe that.
usually I always have the
I know
last
you
word.
do. We'll work on it. this time.
Okay. Well, Madam Chair, I guess I'd like to, I have a lot of respect for people that are elected because you put your name and your, on the line. And so I guess I'd like to, I don't want to put you on the spot, Mr. Mayor, but I guess I'm wondering, I'd like to drill down a little further on why 1 month would be, yes. I don't know if it's okay with the chair. I'd like to hear from the mayor of what his rationale is for that to help me make a better decision. So thank you, Mr.
The
Mayor.
rationale for the vote that Tim brought to the council a couple of weeks ago, the roundabout was the only option. The alternatives was whether we tear up the stormwater and replace that while we were putting the road in, and a sidewalk enhancement. So those were option A and option B. So the council voted for option B, which replaced the stormwater that's 50 years old, and it gave us a boulevard and sidewalks on the east side of the road. That's the way the vote went. The roundabout was the only option. It always has been. So the vote was to take option B, which did the sidewalks and replace the stormwater. And Tim will explain that. I'm sure he's planning on that.
And Madam Chair and Mr. Mayor, so what about like waiting a month? What do you think the National Loon Center, do you think that are you privy to knowing that they're making some big decision within the next month? Or, you made it sound like they got some big decision coming and all we need to do is wait a month. I guess
Speculatively, I'm not really sure. It's been unclear and it keeps getting kicked down the can, so I'm not sure. But I've talked to them pretty seriously and said, we need to know what's going on. This is the day. And I still can't get it. I was on the phone with them on the way down here. I still can't get it. Okay. But they did assure me that in a month, they would know what they're going to do. To answer your question, am I privy of information? On a speculative basis, I maybe am, but I don't really want to mention what that is because it is speculative.
Okay.
So.
Madam Chair, could I ask a question to the county engineer? So, Tim, if the National Loon Center, if that thing would have never came to pass, would the county have considered a roundabout at 3 and 66?
It was talked about even before the Loon Center was even in the picture. So my recollection back in 2017 when the city of Cross Lake and their community action group, the Cross Lakers, brought in the Minnesota design team, and this is a volunteer group of professionals that come in and advise communities how they can improve on a number of different areas. The Loon Center was part of that same, was brought up as one of those things, as was the roundabout, and maybe even a little bit before that. There are some renderings, there are again some community outreach programs and visioning sessions that included a roundabout. So it's likely that it would have been a topic of discussion. Knowing those community visioning sessions and some of the work that had been done before, it was a natural choice when an opportunity presented itself to find some funding to build this community visioning piece.
Okay.
The pedestrian stuff there's always been a problem, and that's my point, if I may, Madam Chair, just to address the 1 month thing. There's always been a challenge with pedestrians coming from the trail, the walking trail there, and crossing County Road 66 at unpredictable and unwarranted and illegal locations throughout, and that's resulted in pedestrian conflicts. And so there's been a concern of trying to provide an opportunity on the east side of the road so people don't have to cross the road. They can pick their side and stay on it and be able to minimize the crossings. My point to the comments about 1 month is that there's an existing problem now with vehicle and pedestrian usage. And so if the Loon Center was to change course or something like that, I would argue that it's still needed. It's still needed. And so that month, if there's something major that happens with the Loon Center, we might be here a month later, and it's the same thing. If you believe me that it's needed right now, regardless of what happens with the Loon Center, then the month isn't worth waiting for. We need to move it forward, if that makes sense.
If I could comment to that, the pedestrian issue is not only foot traffic going from the campground across the road to Town Square or Town Center. It's a major snowmobile trail, it's a bicycle trail, so there's multiple pedestrian crossings at that intersection. And that's what's got the citizens so concerned about all that congestion is right on that corner. Now, I'm not an engineer, and I certainly would never want to step on Tim's toes, but it still doesn't feel good. So, for whatever that's worth.
Madam Chair, if I might, I'd just like to add to my question and that, and so I want to assure the people in the audience that at my age, I've been to Cross Lake numerous times. I currently lead bicycle rides up there on couple trails that I lead this group on, so I frequent your community quite often, even though I don't represent your area. Remember that when we're elected, one group elects us, but we represent the 66,000 people in this county. So it isn't like we don't understand some of the issues in other parts of the county and that we don't take that responsibility seriously. We do. And you should acknowledge that we're not just about, for me, District 3, which is half of Baxter and 80% of Brainerd. I wouldn't have to do anything because the city councils take care of my business. But to Commissioner Coring's point, this is a very difficult decision that we get hit with quite often, and it does feel at times like we're picking winners and losers, which we are. And the people that don't prevail feel like they just lost their cause in that and don't have a voice in it, but in fact you do have a voice, because I would think that, to Commissioner Coring's point, I lose some sleep over some of these things that we have to deal with and the final decisions that we have to make. Now, Commissioner Lubke and I both were at an open house up at the City Hall April 27th, 28th, somewhere in there.
That area.
And I heard no negative comments at that time about that particular open house. So I'm not sure that what we're hearing is the total picture, I guess is what I would say. And I appreciate everybody's input, whether it's positive or negative about a roundabout. It doesn't appear to me that anybody is negative about some kind of traffic control at that particular intersection. But I can tell you that, and I'll just go back to my bike riding, roundabouts don't bother me a bit. The distance that I have to cross a car lane is much less, but as a biker, and if I were a walker, you always have to be cognizant of what's happening with the traffic patterns around you, because you're not going to win the battle against a car or a truck. So it is important that we're all aware, including the drivers of those vehicles, of what's going on around them. And if they aren't, I guess our officers in the back will take care of the problem for us. But physically, we won't have a very good outcome for some of us. So I just wanted to reassure you that my wife and I are up there in your neck of the woods quite often in the year-round, not just in the summer months. So we appreciate that area up there very much. It's a beautiful area. So,
Mr. Barrows, to comment to that, just the fact that you guys are taking this much time to listen to us is very much appreciated. And it shows that you do care and you are thinking hard about it, as we are. So I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just a quick question, Mayor, and this is just for me to understand the makeup of your city council. Are they at large in Cross Lake, or do they represent districts?
No, they're
They're all at large?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair. Oh, Doug.
I just wanted to throw out this maybe to Tim. Given there's one party kind of missing, that being the Loon Center, I don't believe there's anybody representing that today. What would we, if we kind of split this and said, we'll table it until the next meeting, but not a month? Does that help? And then request the Loon Center to be here to share information with us? I guess it's kind of hard to know what's going on there without hearing from them. So I don't know if that's, I just throw it out as an idea, and we'll let Commissioner Lupke speak and take it from there.
Madam Chair.
I think it's your turn.
When I showed up for the job up here in District 2, I've lived in that area since 1980. It was the first thing on the plate. In fact, it was on the plate before I even was sitting behind the desk here. And just to give you a little history, I was working for a small parts store in Pine River, Minnesota in 1973, and I used to call on Cross Lake. And at that time, Cross Lake was a nice little summer town, but there was no reason to go there in the winter. And that's been a long time ago. And I think what we're talking about here is the difference between vision and change. Change is just something we just wrestle with. I'd like everything to be the way it was, but you know what? I look in the mirror every day and it changes. So I would like to just kind of go back when I was in that parts store in 1980 up there was a gentleman that they were going to tear up the railroad tracks. And there's this guy that would show up at the coffee shop, and he had this idea, this weird idea, that we could put a trail where that old railroad bed would be. And, we humored him, Mr. McGowie, as he would come into the coffee shop. We would humor him, and we thought, boy, maybe, I don't know, this is just, who's going to ride their bike on a trail? That was back in the 80s. And now we look, oh, sorry about that. I didn't mean to insult you there. And so it was, and he is known as the father of the Paul Bunyan Trail, and it was for his tenacity, him seeing the vision, him doing the work and getting that done, that we have the trail we have today. Nobody wanted to see those tracks ripped up. We hauled a lot of pulp on those tracks, Then I go back to, because I've been in the area long enough, I've seen Nisswa go through this thing where they're building this tunnel to nowhere. They're going to build this tunnel under 371 to nowhere. It's going to come in on one end, and they don't know what's going to happen on the other end, but they build this thing, and I don't know how much money the city of the Friends of Nisswa raised in order to do that. Well, today now we have this, it's no longer a tunnel to nowhere. It goes under there, it goes over to an area on Nisswa Lake, and then it goes down to a trail that connects with a trail that goes all the way around Gull Lake. But there was a lot of angst and a lot of challenges when that was happening. Then a little closer to me and a little closer to home was the Pequot Lakes was having to make a decision if the highway, and I don't know if you were still with the state at that time, because I know you were with the state when we were talking about it up in Jenkins, but they had to make a decision. Are we going to let the highway go through town, or are we going to do a bypass? And there are people today still in Pequot Lakes that still have a problem with the road going around. But nobody has a problem with going downtown and seeing the vision that those people had in that town with what it would look like to have that beautiful park downtown, that beautiful area there that they could hold all their festivals at, and the trail goes right through it, and people use that trail. It's created just such a beautiful thing. But when they were doing that, the meetings they would have and the angst that was coming out on both sides, there were people that were split family-wise on what that should be. But it takes that. That's what it takes for this. It takes all that input to help us. Now we come up to Cross Lake, and I remember when the design team was up there, and I showed up for the last meeting. I was the mayor of Pine River, but I loved to see what was going on and how this worked. Maybe there's something I could use in Jenkins or something like that, where I was the mayor, as Mayor Jenkins. So I showed up at the design team's last send-off, and it was over at the dam, and there were fires, and there were s'mores, and the design team presented this thing and stuff, and that was back in, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was like 2017 or something like that, 2015, 2017. And then I think that's what precipitated like the Cross Lakers, just actually trying to get this vision, to see this vision for what Cross Lake could be. And that's where all this stuff kind of comes down from. And that change is hard. I mean, to be on one side of an issue or not is a very, very hard thing to do. But in listening to and spending the time at all the meetings that were there, and I don't know if I missed too many of them, but I think I was at all the public meetings. I visited with the Cross Lakers and listened to what the Cross Lakers had to say. And the Cross Lakers are a group that kind of, I think, was formed after and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a Cross Laker, but kind of formed after that design team to kind of get this group of people that are stakeholders in that town to kind of look at what their vision of what they'd like to see their town to be. And they had some challenges there addressing it. You know, they want to know how it's going to affect their business, how it's going to affect the traffic flow and this and those things. But the thing that I think I look at is I can picture a vision with what I've learned of what Cross Lake would look like with the roundabout. And I'm not even talking about a loon center. I think just what Cross Lake needs to do for the vision it can be, to be the town, not the town that, you know, closed up in 73 in the middle of the wintertime, but what it can be. And then I've been involved in the One Watershed, One Plan. And I did not realize how important the stormwater abatement and treating of stormwater is. And then the pedestrian traffic, if you've been in Cross Lake in the middle of summer, you'll find that pedestrian traffic is pretty amazing. I mean, there's a lot of people there. That is a destination in the summertime. So I'm one who looks at the vision. I understand everybody speaking and saying, wait, hold back, but how long do you hold back before that opportunity goes away? We've had the opportunity to have $1.6 million in grants.
Just short of 1.5, just short of 1.5.
Okay, in grants, how many times does that come by for a situation like this? I am one who wants to listen to everybody and hear everybody speak, but there is a vision here, and I look at that gentleman that spoke and says, you know, how many people don't like a roundabout when they first hear about it, and after a year or so, 75 people like it. I don't know how many people down in the middle of Pequot Lakes right now would even want to bring up the fact that they thought the road should go through town because of what they were able to do downtown Pequot. And I can picture the same thing with the same passion and tenacity that the people of Cross Lake have to take that roundabout and turn it into an entrance as you come into the city of Cross Lake and say, here you are, you're in Cross Lake. That's all I had. I don't know if you want me to throw anything more in there than that, but...
Sounds good to me.
Does it? But, so I've come from listening to everybody out there. I have had phone calls at home, both plus and minus, both for and against, and I want everybody to be heard, and I think everybody has to be heard. But as elected officials, it's time to make a decision. And the board, the city council of Cross Lake had made that decision. They had a 4-to-1 vote. And I've been on those boards where, council, where I was the one who voted against it and not the 4 that voted for it. And I had to speak for the will of that council. And that's what we have here today. The will of the council of Cross Lake is to go ahead with the project that has been submitted. The will of our board is to either say no to it or to go ahead with it.
Quick. We're not going to go through everybody.
I just want to reiterate what Dave said. What the council voted on was not to accept a roundabout. That was their only option. They didn't vote on choosing a roundabout over lights. So no, the council did not vote as Mr. Lubke insinuated.
I have him shaking his head no, that he doesn't agree, so I'm not going to let everybody else get up and speak again.
Madam Chair, we have in our packet, we have that, what are they called? Yes, we have that. Resolution 2308 from the City of Cross Lake. And I think, Tim, can you find it there? Now therefore be it resolved, the City Council for Cross Lake supports the future installation of a roundabout at the junction of CASA 3 and CASA 66 and adopts its configuration as a preferred alternative for the Cross Lake pedestrian and intersection improvement project. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And it's signed by the mayor of Cross Lake, attested to by the city administrator.
That's correct. Yes.
So that is their preferred route on record.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, on page 132 of our packet is a resolution. How does anybody wish to proceed?
I don't have it up on my screen.
Okay,
Can you pull it up here, Therese?
it's on page 132.
There it is.
I've got two screens and I can't find either one of them right now.
Madam Chair, it is up on the screen.
Oh, good.
I would move the resolution.
Do we have a second?
I will second that.
We have a motion from Commissioner Coring, a second from Commissioner Lubke. Is there any more discussion on the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next, jail staffing.
Boy, I usually fill a room, not disperse it, but you guys, hopefully this next one won't be as contentious. Madam Chair, distinguished commissioners, we have before you a presentation on some jail staffing issues. I'd like to say, I guess rephrase not issues, but opportunities here for you to look at. It takes 44 correction officers to work the floor in order to keep the jail in operation. And we never have that 44 because of family medical leave or other things that come up, training, a number of different things why people aren't at work. And we want to present to you today an opportunity to look at some additional staffing for our jail so that we can stay up to that current level of 44 because we're never there. We're always like 8 under. So with that, I'm going to have our correction officer, Troy, provide you with this slideshow.
Madam Chair and the board, I thank you for your attention and your time. My name is Lieutenant Ron Inbrand of Crow Wing County Jail. We start with just the mission for the jail. The Crow Wing County Jail is dedicated to serving as citizens of Crow Wing County and its neighboring communities. Our goal is to preserve the basic rights and dignity of those detained here by employing trained professional staff to provide the care, structure, and discipline to motivate positive lifestyle change for detainees while exceeding all standards set forth by law and maximizing the financial and social benefits to the communities we serve. Some of the goals that we were trying to address in this presentation is officer wellness. There's an increased workload in the jail, an involving working environment leading to high turnover, high burnout, and it's affecting our correctional officers. We also are looking to increase staff retention, which should conserve some costs and potentially increase revenue if we can get staffing to open up the Gulf Housing Unit. To address officer wellness, there was an increased workload. COVID presented its own challenges. After, in this post-COVID world, we are still feeling the impact in the jail. Court is about 98%, 95% virtual these days, which means a correctional officer needs to be getting the inmates in front of the court for their appointments. Their attorney appointments are virtual. Their assessments are virtual. Every single one of these virtual appointments is now an additional workload to our corrections staff that used to be handled by people coming in from the outside and handling this on their own. Part of the evolving work environment in the jail is the mental health crisis that we are experiencing. This is a slide of a recent incident where an inmate broke his shelf off a window and used that shelf to then poke some holes in the window. We had to move that inmate. This is the cell the next day. He tore a shelf off a wall and broke through the entire window at that time. This is a quick example of some of the mental health crises that are happening in the jail. You can see this is a quick photo of one of our officers in a Tyvek suit cleaning up after a cell, after an inmate had left the cell. The reason they're in a Tyvek suit is because that isn't all food that he's cleaning up. A quick snapshot of the booking area. You'll see we have 2 booking officers working inside the booking area. I have one of the court officers helping. We have transport officers awaiting transport. We have facilities waiting to be escorted into a unit. They are busy, they are hardworking, and they are getting, they're experiencing difficulties because of it. Part of the mental health crisis is our problem with civil commitments. And in a recent email from Nathan Bertram, he states that from what I gather from all of this, the state overall has a significant weight problem. Additionally, that other resources like psychiatric hospitals are not numerous to manage the population, so more individuals ending in jail. Jail is the #1 place that people have sat. You can see the number of days and the number of transports from 2019 to 2022 has increased tremendously, nearly doubled, and we only see that trend continuing. This is that information laid out on a graph which clearly displays the increase that our jail staff are dealing with every day. If you see the days waiting for transport on the far left of the graph on the bottom, that very big bar that's nearly 3 times the size of the one next to it, that is the Crow Wing County Jail. Those are inmates waiting, those are inmates suffering, those are inmates in turmoil for days and days and months, and our correctional officers are in there with them, doing the best that they can. This is increasing burnout, it's causing high turnover rates. You can see from 2020 till now, we've hired 39 new employees, only 18 of them remain in custody. 11 of them didn't even make it through the field training process. This is a quick graph that displays that turnover. This is a couple weeks old, so the 2023 graph would need to be a couple of bumps higher at this point, already even with our 2022 or our 2020 numbers. The added workload and increased burnout in an already high burnout career just increases the stress and burnout. I would ask you to imagine yourself trying to complete your daily work with someone kicking, relentlessly beating on a metal door, screaming personal obscenities toward you. That is trauma that our staff deal with every single day. Along with the trauma of staff assaults, inmate assaults, and the vicarious trauma of having to deal with the lives that these people live and then bring into our jail. Our jail staff has to experience all of that. All of these contribute to turnover, and then the increased turnover contributes to an increased burnout, stress, and trauma, which creates a turnover loop that I call the turnover triangle that continues to feed itself. This is a quick snapshot of the hiring process. From interview till working on the floor in the jail, if everything goes well, is about 4 to 6 months. If we have people interviewed and backgrounded, that cuts it down by about 1 month. At our best case scenario, when someone puts in a 2-week notice, we are 3 to 5 months behind every single time someone leaves our jail. Our current mitigation tactics are to post voluntary overtime, post mandatory overtime, shuffle staff around, restrict PTO, and cancel short shifts. We all know that overtime is costly. All of these other mitigation tactics also contribute to stress and burnout in our facility. I am very proud to work in this county and the work that we've done in our retention initiatives with the recruitment and retention team, Marie Ridgway, the EAP, Frontline Care Project, the mandatory yearly mental health check-ins, our work with Steve Hegley, a culture shift consultant, and Breachpoint Consulting is a resiliency training. These are all wonderful things that we're doing to help staff address their mental health needs. Unfortunately, the turnover is still continuing. As the sheriff said, we currently have 44 full-time employees approved to work the floor. The last time we had all jail staff hired, trained in, and working on the floor was December 8th, 2018, and that lasted approximately 3 weeks. That is the longest stretch in the entirety of the 16-year jail history across the street. Every DOC inspection we have, our DOC inspectors are telling us we should have 3 staff in booking at all times. We do staffing analysis that we did in 2019 states that we need 6 additional staff and 1 additional sergeant. We are currently working through a new staffing analysis, and it appears to be lining up with what we discovered in 2019. What I'm asking for today is to allow for a hiring buffer of 4 officers to create a pool of people ready to fill in when vacancies arise. Our finance department has put together the numbers. If we limit it to 4 officers that we're allowed to hire above our minimum, that could potentially cost an additional $25,000 a year. That would be if we could get all 4 of them hired at once before a termination comes in or a resignation comes in. We are currently in a reactive paradigm, and my goal is to push the jail in a more proactive paradigm with your support. If by chance we do get all of those 4 people hired and they did start, we could make it a requirement to have that 3rd booking officer in the jail or down in booking. It reduces the workload, reduces burnout and stress, makes booking run smoother. This move has also been recommended by a DOC inspector, and you can see the quote from the 2020 DOC inspection. In addition to booking in new arrivals, the intake staff are also responsible for the indirect supervision of 2 housing units, totaling 46 beds adjacent to the intake area. The intake area has a large volume of inmate traffic. As the number of annual intakes rise, consideration should be given to additional staffing in this area. This is a quick snapshot of what we are currently bringing in as far as our boarding. We're bringing in roughly $905,000 a year from Cass County and roughly $657,000 a year with Stearns County. We also generate some additional revenue with DOC work release and taking small amounts of boarders from other counties. There is a cost to not taking action. If we continue to do what we've always done, we'll continue to get what we've always gotten. Staffing shortages do damage to our people, cost the county revenue, increases liability from lawsuits, and is a problem that perpetuates itself and creates that turnover triangle. And you can see some very recent news stories of the Beltrami jail ordered to reduce its capacity after a DOC investigation. Ramsey County Sheriff ordered to shrink the jail population after a DOC investigation. These are all because of staffing problems that these jails are having. This is not just a local problem for us. This is a statewide and a national problem, and I would like to see the Crow Wing County on the leading edge of taking care of the people who take care of us while we sleep. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Madam Chair, if I might, I'm in support of this, just so the other board members understand this. 2 things that I would encourage the Sheriff's Department to look at. And first of all is when we have somebody obviously in a mental health crisis in our jail, and there's the 48-hour rule, that at the point of the 49th hour, we begin to build an invoice that we send to DHS to elevate the issue that we have in our county jails. And I will encourage that at AMC meetings and MICA meetings that I go to for every sheriff's department to do that so that it gets some attention from the department and from the legislature. Second thing is, and I don't know that much about this, but it's my understanding that we don't bill if one of our officers transports somebody from a CBHH to another facility, for instance, Anoka or St. Peter. And if we don't, we should. There are counties that are doing that, and they get paid by the state of Minnesota for those transports. So if we're not currently doing that, my encouragement is that we need to start doing that. We need to pull those dollars back from all the responsibilities that the state originally promised they would do, and they aren't doing. So that would be something to challenge you folks with, but we need to elevate some of these issues to a broader conversation down there in St. Paul.
Agreed.
Madam Chair, I wholeheartedly support this. We talked about it in personnel and so got a very in-depth, had a very in-depth conversation at that time. And all my comments are today is to say thanks to all you guys that are, and gals in law enforcement. I got to tell you, I'm getting to the point where I can't hardly watch the news anymore of seeing what the lawless society that's happening, that people don't think they have to abide by any laws. I don't know, it's getting to be a scary deal. I watched CCO last night and the problems that Brooklyn Park is having. I mean, it is bad, you know, and it's amazing the people that defund the police. But then when somebody is stealing their car, where's the police? Well, I guess we don't have any because you wanted to defund them. So it's just, it's a crazy world. You know, I grew up in the 80s, and if somebody would have told me that all this stuff would be happening now and we'd have all these stupid cell phones and stupid Facebook and all this stuff, I'd have said, nah, you're crazy. But here it is. You know, and so we got to try to deal with it. But just want to say thank you to you guys. It's a thankless job, and I don't know for the life of me why anybody'd want to do it. But you guys got to be held up on a pedestal because, thank God, and I just hope that there's some younger people coming forward that want to go into law enforcement, because if they don't, we are in big, big trouble. And with the legislature. You know, obviously it's not they're all the kind of focusing in on law-abiding citizens and taking away their rights. I just, I don't know, it's scary. I just hope we can defend ourselves if there's not any law enforcement people. So anyway, I guess that's it, Madam Chair.
Does anyone else have anything to share?
I was just going to add, I think I referred to him as Troy. This is our Lieutenant of Jail Operations, Ron Ingram. I know him well.
Same color shirt, though.
He boxed this weekend, so I didn't want to make sure that he doesn't get after me after this thing. So he's a really excellent in his position, and I really appreciate him. I thank you all for your support for law enforcement and for the Sheriff's Office as well, so thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if there's no other questions or statements, I would make the motion to authorize the Crow Wing County Sheriff's Office to extend offers for up to 4 beyond their budgeted FTE count for purposes of managing the staffing levels necessary for the efficient operation of the Crow Wing County Jail.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Barrows, second by Commissioner Coring. Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day. Thank you so much for everything you do.
Thanks.
Is the county attorney online?
No.
Okay. Okay, county administrator.
Madam Chair, members of the board, there was a senior management team meeting yesterday. We talked about some of the catch-up work that we're going to have to do in our income maintenance unit. During COVID, we were not allowed to disqualify anybody from any of the public assistance programs. Now, that public health emergency is ending, and we have to go back to the business of doing the normal income verification that folks still meet criteria for the various programs that they're in. That's all going to come at once, where normally, you know, you do 1/12 of it each month on a rotating basis. What I'm a little bit nervous about is the downstream impact 1 year from now. Will we be having this that way for a long time now? I hope not. I'm hoping that we can stagger some of those. I think that's going to make the most sense. At any rate, that is a challenge for the income maintenance unit that is on their horizon. Thankfully, there are some state resources for unwinding the public health emergency, so we had a conversation about that. I think you'll hear about it at the next Personnel Committee meeting. We also talked about training and development for our supervisors, frontline supervisors, and trying to come up with a standardized way that we're going to train new supervisors. You know, if you're a great social worker, then we make you a supervisor. As if the skills, talents, and abilities of being a great supervisor are identical to that which is being a good social worker. They're not. And think about how many times we promote people and then don't tell them how we want them to be that supervisor for Crow Wing County. It's really about your branding and making sure that what's important from a management perspective is driven through the management ranks, through training and development. So we're talking about that. We also talked about excellence nominations. I'm happy to answer questions about that or anything else related to county government. I do have a couple of other items. No questions?
No.
Madam Chair, you do have a request for board action in your packet from the Evergreen Cemetery Association, and what it boils down to is some really old history. I don't know for sure. I'm going to speculate a little that at the time the Evergreen Cemetery was formed, one of the partners that helped to make sure that it was financially successful was probably Crow Wing County. We purchased a number of lots for indigent burials, and we haven't used any of those lots. I think the last time anybody was buried in one of those lots was in 1950. And so it's been a long time. So much so that the Evergreen Cemetery Association, as is common with old cemeteries, they're not entirely sure if there are some remains in those areas or not. They are running out of space in Evergreen Cemetery and would have proposed to trade an equal number of available lots in Evergreen Cemetery for an equal number of lots at Memorial Gardens. I think from our perspective, indigent burials, we really don't mind where someone wishes to be buried, and so having that stash of lots available for those purposes, I think works just fine for us at Memorial Gardens. They have offered to do some ground penetrating radar to make sure that we don't disturb any remains that are in these lot areas, and after they've done the ground penetrating radar, they will be able to tell us how many lots actually get moved. They would commit to giving us that same number of lots free of charge. We pay for opening and closing now. That would remain unchanged. So it's basically allowing them to swap lots that we own between Evergreen Cemetery and Memorial Gardens so that they can free those up for the general public.
Madam Chair, do we know who is, that some of those lots are used, of those 100 lots?
Well, if this is like many cemeteries, I think the proper answer to the question is the older the record, the less reliable the record.
Okay. I'm a sexton for 3 cemeteries, and so I'm kind of familiar with that, but usually those records are pretty well kept unless they weren't. Our cemetery goes back to 1895 up in Pequot, so.
Especially voluntary cemetery associations, you know, these are volunteers, and they just change over. They all tend to be retired people, you know, doing this kind of stuff for the long term. So I guess what I would say is we've been blessed to have a cemetery association operating in Crow Wing County for that long and doing as good a job as they can. And I think the ground penetrating radar will probably shed more light on how accurate those records are or are not.
Madam Chair, I would so move the request for board action to enter into this agreement with Evergreen Cemetery Association.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Coring, second by Commissioner Barrows. Is there any more discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Chair, members of the board, you also have a request for board action in your packet to appoint Judith Peepgrass to replace Agnes Sykes as the District 4 representative on the Community Health Services Advisory Committee. That term would expire at the end of 2024. And further, that we would prepare a certificate of appreciation for Ms. Sykes for her service.
Now, do these require board action, or can I appoint them?
You may appoint.
I will make that appointment.
Okay. We also have a request for board action in your packet to appoint Jennifer Bergman to replace Craig Nathan as the District 4 representative on the Crow Wing County HRA. That term would expire at the end of 2025. This action does require board action, Madam Chair. We would also do a certificate of appreciation for Mr. Nathan as well for his service.
Okay, and that's my appointment, so.
It is your appointment, but we need board action.
But I can't make the motion.
Correct.
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion to appoint Jennifer Bergman to replace Craig Nathan.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Lepke, second by Commissioner Barrows. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Chair, just a couple of other items. One, I have some disappointing news, I think, on our jail health program. We are running into some snags with the Essentia legal team, I think, being concerned about some of the liability associated with that. So that's a developing story, and I will brief you on that as I know more. The project team is already assembled and is busily looking at what other alternatives we may have. What I will say is I don't think it's a done deal yet. We're still talking, but we are running into some snags. So hopefully we can resolve those and simply move forward. But I don't know that at this point. Second, the conclusion of the legislative session. There's a lot of stuff that happened in this legislative session.
Oh, my
Holy
word.
moly. And I remember us complaining about the last legislative session that not enough got done, so be careful what you ask for, I guess. If I had to summarize what I see coming out of the legislature is we will have more resources coming from the state of Minnesota. We will also have more requirements coming from the state of Minnesota. And so it is hard for me to say at this point whether that's a net gain for Crow Wing County or a net loss. I'm hoping it's a net gain. It should be a net gain. If they sent money to pay for what they are asking us to do, that's a good thing. So I'm going to, as that becomes clearer, we'll prepare a briefing for you, and probably I might be at the next board meeting, but that might be a little too soon. But I want to give you a briefing on what are the important things that changed at the legislature. We'll do that at a regular board meeting so the public can hear as well. Madam Chair, that is all I have for you today. Do you have questions for me?
Any questions? Any additional business?
Madam Chair, I'd make the motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Second. Motion by Commissioner Barrows, second by Commissioner Hoag. All those in